Good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. In this video I'm going to talk about some things basically that you should get done before the advent of the pre-patch for War Within, and also discussing some of the things you need to make sure you get done before the end of Season 4. Now Season 4 will be ending roughly 3 to 4 weeks before the start of War Within, coinciding with the pre-patch. The reason for this is once pre-patch starts, gearing kind of goes out the window. I mean, it's already out the window, but it goes completely out the window as gear becomes largely very accessible because of the pre-patch event and the gear that it gives. So they end up, not cancelling, but ending the season to obviously prevent people from kind of capitalizing on the easy gear. This should be 3 to 4 weeks before the advent of the 26th. You can see here the Mr. Pandaria remix ends on the 20th of August. It's very likely that at the beginning of August or at the very end of July, we're probably going to have the pre-patch event begin. Now that event will go into more detail when it is available in the full, but for now what you need to know is that's when it's going to begin, and so that's when you need to make sure you have everything done. So now let's talk about what everything means. So the first thing we're going to talk about is raiding, gearing, and Mythic Plus. So obviously in terms of raiding, gearing, and Mythic Plus, it should be pretty straightforward. As you guys should know, currently during Season 4 we are cycling through the raids. So basically every week there's a different raid that is fated or awakened, and this raid gives out the maximum rewards for that week. So for example, this week it's Amdrasil or Amir-Drasil, and basically during this, LFR, normal, heroic, and mythic all give out the maximum item level rewards. Along top of this, there are also certain mounts and achievements that you're going to want to get. Now these don't show up here because they're feats of strength, but they are currently active until the end of Season 4, and one of the achievements, which is completing all of them on normal, gives the Voyaging Wildling Dragon Riding Mount. This is a mount that's going to maybe eventually come back, but at this point it's the easiest way to get it, and doing normal is not actually that hard on all of the fated raids. I'm going to be making sure I get this done, and it's something you should be doing. At the same time, on top of that, this is your last real chance to participate properly in Mythic Plus for this season. Now as you guys should know, Mythic Plus took quite a big change up in terms of its functionality, and so attempting Mythic Plus is quite important. On top of not only the fact that Mythic Plus essentially, for lack of a better term, gives you some pretty good gear, but it also again gives you a whole bunch of rewards, especially the Mythic Plus rating rewards for the various mounts. So again, getting a Mythic Plus rating of etc. or higher tends to give you some really good rewards, and so you're going to want to obviously try and do that as well. So it is quite tough, definitely from a like performance point of view. I think there is a lot of stuff that players are going to want to do, and I think Mythic Plus and raiding is probably where you need to start wrapping up the soonest, because those are the things that are going to go out of vogue. It's probably why you're seeing so many runs being sold and things like that, is because of the need for these bits of content. Speaking of gearing and speaking of raiding, let's not forget PvP, because there are PvP players in this world, and of course this is also your last season of PvP. Now if you are interested in picking up anything related to PvP, like the gladiator mounts for example, you're going to need to invest yourself pretty much quite heavily into this PvP season. There is just enough time to essentially grab yourself the gladiator mount for this season, but it is going to be a bit of a hard task for you. Rated PvP gives this new seasonal mount, the Vicious Stream Talon, and a very cool mount, by the way. It's a hybrid wolf vicious stream talon creature. But yeah, basically if you're going to get through this, you're going to need to make sure that you play PvP. It's your last mount for the season. It's also your last time to really gear yourself up and get your rating up for the end of the campaign. There is still plenty of stuff that you want to do outside of raids, PvP, and dungeons inside of Dragonflight. And there's plenty of content here, and so I highly recommend you do a couple of things. Firstly, open up your achievement section and go down and start looking at the Dragon Isles. There's plenty of things that you can quite easily do and probably want to get done. For example, there's a ton of achievements for achievement points. There's tons of treasures you may want to collect that will have toys. There's things like finishing out your dragon riding. This is going to be pretty important because dragon riding is something that is now unlockable and usable across the whole of Azeroth. So it's very important to fill out your dragon riding points, and just in general, trying to finish up some of the side quests and stories that you haven't finished. If you haven't managed to finish the main plot line or anything like that, please make sure that you continue doing so. And just in general, this is an alt, so just please forgive the quest lines, but just in general, try and finish up what you can. Realistically, there's so many mounts, treasures, side quests, and things that you can really wrap up, even if you're someone that's been playing from the beginning, and it's really just something that's good to do while in expansion. Your chances of coming back to Dragonflight for an extended period of time are pretty low. So trying to finish up some of these now, while they're still viable, especially while there's still players doing them, even if it's only occasionally, it's very important. Things like Dream Surges, things like Primal Storms, all of these things are only really going to be able to be done now until you get some crazy power spike at the end of the next expansion. So try to look at cleaning these things up now. Okay, so now we've spoken about kind of like current content and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about what else we can do. Well, the first thing in terms of catching up or other things to do essentially is going to be using your now inflated item level to go back and partake in some other bits of content. So, for example, at this point in time, you're as powerful as the kind of cross-expansion power gaps are going to be. So this is a great time for you to consider going back and running some older raids, be it for transmog, mounts, etc. This is going to be a really good time for you to go back into other expansions and start trying to pick up maybe mounts, transmog, achievements, anything like that. And in terms of raids, now, considering your strength, you can probably go back all the way to even things like BFA and start soloing them. Legion you can definitely solo, and this is going to be a great time to pick up not only loot, like some amazing transmog, but also being able to pick up, hopefully, some mounts. And I think it's very important that players use this time to try and grab these. It's one of those things that players can often forget, and this is a great time to really benefit from going back and doing these. Not to mention, also, it's an absolutely spankingly good time. It's an absolutely great time to essentially organize yourself a whole bunch of fantastic runs. So you can go back and quickly complete quest lines, you can go back and quickly complete a whole bunch of content. It really is one of the top moments to really kind of book up a ton of content that's in the older expansions. Not to mention, of course, that now I believe we have the ability to dragonfly in all of this content. So zooming around really is probably up there for the best, and I would say players should really keep an eye out for this as well. One bonus thing that I do want to mention is the Mage Tower. So I've spoken before about why players should take on the Mage Tower, but since speaking about transmog and things like that, the Mage Tower is something you do want to take on, largely because the balancing gets a bit out of whack in a new expansion, so taking it on then is not a great call. So you rather want to take it on now, while again you're at kind of that peak of cross kind of expansion power peak. So this is definitely the best time to do that. So let's talk about making some gold. So obviously it's the end of an expansion, and the thing is, a lot of times a lot of mats, gear, etc. is all kind of selling at its peak. Well, I'm saying mats, but mats are probably selling at their lowest. But the thing is, a lot of the times now is a great time to specifically look at selling items. Maybe it's junk in your bag. Maybe, for example, it's gear that you no longer need to equip. But you have plenty ways to grab yourself some gold. And especially if you want to start clearing up some of your mats, which we'll talk about just now, or even not clearing up your mats and still trying to make a bit of money out of the end of the expansion, because there are still people that will be, for example, crafting, disenchanting, still looking for peak power. There's still raiding groups that are still ongoing. So anything where you can make money, be it alchemy, making mats, etc., you still have some value in the expansion. So as a crafter, there's still some value there, and also as a player, there is still some value there. Now again, it's not the greatest value in the world. Like I say, the value of mats has dropped a little bit, but selling what you can and trying to make as much money as possible is going to help net you out a little bit of money, especially when it comes to for example, things like the rousing airs, rousing fires. These are going to be some crucial components that players are still using, and selling what you have to make a bit of money while it's still hot, while it's still being used, is pretty important if you're looking to capitalize. So since we're talking about making money, and obviously daily quests, things like that always helps, but ultimately at the end of the day, you are still looking to clean up these bags. Your bag gets super duper cluttered by the end of an expansion, be it mats, temporary crafting materials, gimmicks, items you used at certain points. There's tons of trash in your bag. You're probably still, like me, carrying potions and food and things from way back when that realistically you are just not going to use. So cleaning up your bags is something that's super important. You don't want to end up going into another expansion with bags that are inundated, filled with items that you really just don't need to have, and items that ultimately you're going to end up kind of regretting using to a certain extent. Very, very important. Then, of course, as well, on top of that, you also want to make sure that you have some good space. Realistically, a lot of this stuff isn't going to be something that you're going to be able to use super duper often. So whether you can sell it or not sell it, or whether you are able to make money out of it, is important. But also, you really, really want to clean these things up, because you want to go into the new expansion nice and ready, because you're going to build up your clutter in that expansion as well. And this ties into obviously making money, because of course you want to make sure that you have your region banks clean. And this is probably where you'll make the most money, as you'll find that some of these do sell for decent money, or alternatively still sell to vendors for decent gold, and you'll be able to stockpile a little bit of money yourself. So let's talk about some other things. So firstly, I want to talk, before I talk about leveling alts or things like that, let's talk about some of the other World of Warcraft content. So right now there is Mr. Pandaria Remix. As most people should know, there's a lot of incentive for playing this, from tons of easy mounts to get, tons of transmog to get, and just a really fun time. It's also a great way to level alts, which we'll talk about just now. But realistically, it's one of those times where you probably want to partake in the game mode. You don't have to play too much, especially since they buff the rates of bronze. You don't have to get everything, but going in and grabbing yourself some of the rarer mounts is definitely worth it and super easy to do. So I highly suggest that while you got a bit of downtime, if you're someone who's muddling about, not too certain what to do, spending even a week inside Mr. Pandaria Remix is very beneficial for you as a player. So speaking of Pandaria Remix, obviously anyone who's watched any content about it knows it's a great way to level alternative characters. Some of your characters you may want to consider finishing up. If you're like me, you got a lot of characters in the 60s, And the pre-patch event generally will be a great time to do this, as usually it's a great time for leveling, but you may want to decide that while you're getting ready for it, you may want to look at obviously finishing up these characters. So it is something that you could do, although I would say if you're not too keen on leveling, or you're not leveling from a super low base, like these characters, maybe consider just, full on leaving them till pre-patch. If it comes to characters you're leveling kind of from zero, then I would say definitely consider using your Mr. Pandaria type of content. It's fantastic for leveling up characters that are super low level. They level very quick, and it saves you a ton of time. And speaking of upcoming pre-patch, let's talk a little bit about obviously the gearing of characters. If you're like me, you've got a ton of characters that exist across a spectrum of gear. Characters you started the expansion strong with, characters you entered the mid-game with, and characters you are ending the expansion with. So you may want to consider using this character to re-gear up. Now you can do this by doing raids and things of such nature while you wait for the pre-patch to arrive. That is more than fine. You don't have to wait till pre-patch to gear up. But if you're specifically looking to gear up ults that you're not using, so let's say you don't want to use them during the raid, you don't want to use them during certain content, then what I suggest is waiting for the pre-patch. These characters are going to be pretty out of date, and pre-patch is going to give you an opportunity to realign yourself gear-wise. So any character that you're not necessarily super duper down to obviously consume or complete all the content with, then rather you're better off let's say gearing that character up through the pre-patch. It's just something that's a bit better. If your character is more current, or it's a character you plan on raiding with, then yes, of course, by all means go and gear up your character using things like the awakened raids, using things like all the catch-up mechanics. That's more than fine. But I do just want to point out that basically pre-patch will be the best way to gear up your characters, so keep an eye out for that. And the last but not least, if you are still interested in playing World of Warcraft, try out Season of Discovery, try out Warcraft Cataclysm. These are great alternative ways to play World of Warcraft that tons of players will be enjoying across the zones, and just enjoying in general. I will say, for me personally speaking, I'm probably going to be spending a bit of time playing Cataclysm. It's a ton of fun for me, and I do really enjoy Cata. I think it's a great time, and I think it's really one of the more fun expansions for me personally. But you can play whatever you want, and if you don't feel like playing Cataclysm or Season of Discovery, you can play yourself basically whatever you feel like. Go and play Elden Ring. They've got a great new expansion that's coming out. If anyone's a big fan of that game, I suggest you go crazy for it. Maybe you like Genshin Impact. Go and play that. Don't be scared to play other games, especially a month out from the new expansion. If you've been playing diligently, it's more than fine to go and try to save yourself some time and stress and just detox from World of Warcraft before you take on the next expansion. But that's it. So that's it from me. I hope this has helped you guys a little bit in guiding you on what to do. Of course, guys, anytime you play World of Warcraft, please enjoy yourselves, don't feel too stressed, and just have a great time. I find that the month or so, or the 2 months before the end of the expansions, actually some of the best times for me. A lot of the times it's because of easy gear and easy access to things like raids, but it's also just because now I kind of have the full picture in front of me, and so I find it really fun trying to essentially enjoy myself, having a good time, just basically like doing some good content in World of Warcraft and having a great time. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, and until then, see you guys in the next one. And yeah, thanks for watching, because I really enjoy all your support, and I hope you guys have had a great time. And if there's anything you feel that players should focus on, leave it down in the comments, because I think it'll be a ton of fun. Bye.